So this episode introduces us to a very rare, very unique, very special character. A character that will go on to be a wonder and a very special, unique character throughout the entire Star Trek franchise. And that is, of course, a woman who can actually resist Kirk's charms. Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Is There in Truth No Beauty, which is episode 7 of season 3 of Star Trek The Original Series. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Star Trek The Original Series, one episode at a time. In this video I will cover the episode Is There in Truth No Beauty. So I always found this to be a pretty boring episode. I was never that into it myself. I had recently watched several reviews from several different people who really love this episode and heap a lot of praise onto it and point it out to be unique. And I've also seen some opinions or some reviews of people who hated this episode, thought it was really boring. I'm kind of in the middle, like I don't particularly like it, but I don't particularly hate it either. I was trying to find out what the general reception of on IMDb. It's rated like it's in the 60s, so out of 79 episodes, it's not pretty high. Actually, it might be in the high 50s. No, it was like 60. It was like 61, I think. So I think it counts the cage, so 80 episodes, but still, so it's in the lower echelon. It was, I believe it was slightly above episodes like Private Little War and Friday's Child, which I didn't think very kindly of those episodes. And Whom Gods Destroy was slightly below it too, but I think that's a much better episode. But I think I'm alone in that. But anyway, I'll get to that one eventually. Like, I watched this podcast recently with Scott Mans where they interviewed the director of this episode, and they were all like heaping and loving praise on it and saying it's the best thing ever. Apparently, this is the same director who directed the episode Metamorphosis in season 2, and several of the other positive reviews I saw in this episode also liked Metamorphosis as well, so maybe there's a connection there. I liked Metamorphosis better than this episode. Metamorphosis wasn't one of my favorite TOS episodes, but I still liked it a lot. This one, I wouldn't say I liked it a lot. I would say I didn't hate it. I think is the best praise I can heap on it. So I think it's mostly boring, and I do have a couple issues with it. So, first of all, is the whole concept of beauty that they really hammer home. And in fact, they keep referring to the Medusan as ugly, and they're saying, oh, it's so ugly to look at, it makes you go mad. And they keep using the word ugly, and not kind of realizing that it's a pejorative term. And, Kirk, even when he's trying to romance Miranda Jones, who, as I mentioned before, I believe is the only character seen in the original series that actually turned Kirk down and doesn't instantly have the hots for him and want to sleep with them extremely badly. Don't give me the freaking Star Trek 2009 where horror turns him down, because that's a fucking reboot Kelvin verse bullshit. That doesn't count. But just in the original series itself, all the women are like super hot. It was actually refreshing though, to be honest. And Kirk was actually doing a terrible job saying, "Oh, you shouldn't be around someone so ugly." He knows that she has a huge attachment and strong feelings towards Ambassador what's his name, Callum, whatever his name is, the Medusan guy, and so by blatantly insulting and saying you should not waste your life being around someone so ugly, I mean, come on, Kirk. He's usually better than that. But anyway, Yeah, and so, but they kept bringing up the beauty, and McCoy, the way they were talking at dinner and stuff, was like, oh, why are you devoting yourself to someone so ugly and whatever. It's not ugly, it's just a different alien that the human mind can't comprehend in concept. I think to refer to that as ugly is kind of inaccurate, and it was done purposely so they could try to make this commentary on beauty, which and how beauty is skin deep, and is there in truth no beauty? Like that's, but it's kind of a contrived message that doesn't really fit, because I think that's just the wrong way to look at it. Now, I do find the concept of the Medusans really interesting, and yeah, it's just not handled very well in this episode, because usually, Star Trek is infamous for aliens being, human beings with crap slapped on their foreheads, or original series. Usually sometimes they don't even go to that effort, and they just look like regular human beings. So it's actually good at the few rare times. I talked about this already in the review for Tholian Web, which, is an episode that actually will air later. I went on, but I did my review for that several years ago, and I went on and on about how unique the Tholians are. And I guess that's, a trait that they've done in season 3 several times. And so I appreciate that, and I appreciate the concept, and in this case, having that weird alien be a friend, be someone benevolent, but so different from human beings and other humanoids that it affects, just by looking at it, it affects them negatively. But he doesn't intend for them to go mad. So that's a really interesting concept. And so I think I have to bring up this prodigy that made a Medusan the main character of that show. When I first heard of that, I was like, oh no, they're bringing back those boring aliens from that boring TOS episode I don't really care about. But they sort of... it is different. Zero in Prodigy is quite different than the ambassador that we see here, and the technology around them is different, but over 100 years have passed, so I could buy that they would be more mobile and not trapped in the box, and could actually communicate, have a voice that would allow Zero to communicate with others, because of course he would not be a very interesting character otherwise. And they brought in more of a backstory and a history to Medusans, which I like, and I think that's very fascinating. So I think Prodigy actually made me appreciate this episode a little bit more, at least appreciate the Medusan in general. I think what ruined the episode for me is all the talk about beauty and how he's so ugly, because that just seems like the wrong way to state things. And also I don't like, and this is something that happens in the original series all the time, and I've ranted about it before, how all the men always have to drool and slobber all over any beautiful woman that comes on board the ship. And it's just, again, you could say that seems outdated, but it's just, it's just annoying. It's very annoying how they have to do it, and having that dinner and droning on and on about how beautiful she is, and why are you wasting your time spending with someone so ugly. You should be off singing songs, or being a ballerina, or figure skating, doing girly things. They didn't say that, but I don't know. That's what I get out of it. You should be find a good man and marry him, or something, or sleep around, I guess. I don't know. What are they getting at? She's a fucking scientist who's very smart, and all they can talk about is how good looking she is. Yeah, but to be fair to this episode, she rightfully fights back against that stereotype, which is more than what happened in the previous episodes, so that's good. But why they're behaving that way in the first place is not good. Now, speaking of the dinner scene, there's a moment in this dinner scene where I find that this is what kind of moments like these is what stopped me from liking this episode or thinking it's a really good episode, is when she's all of a sudden like has this like mystery like psychic moment where she's like, someone in this room is thinking of murder, and they show like the box that the Medusan is, and they go play this diary music, and then they instantly forget it and go back to drinking their drinks. Now, and also it's like from a story perspective, it's like trying to, there's a murderer in this room. I wonder who could it be? Could it be Kirk? Could it be Spock? Could it be Scotty? Could it be McCoy? Or, now this is not likely, but maybe entertain this, but I don't know. Just on the off chance, maybe it's that one guy who's not a main character. God damn it. Of course it's him. It's so dumb the way that they like bring that in. And also, I shouldn't gloss over the fact, in fact, I've tried to read up on this episode. No one else seems to mention the fact that she is a human with psychic powers. Something that was dropped from Star Trek canon, never ever mentioned again. Never ever mentioned that humans can acquire, like, do Vulcan mind melds and stuff if they're studying on Vulcan, because she has natural psychic tendencies. I mean, this is something that Babylon 5 brought up, where in the future there was a small group of humans who were born with psychic abilities, and those abilities were harnessed. But in Star Trek, that's not a thing. And so this is like immediately forgotten after this episode, and I'm so amazed that no one mentioned this fact. Like all the psychics or mind readers and whatnot, telepathic powers on Star Trek are all aliens. Betazoids, Vulcans, what have you. But, you know, they needed to have it for this plot, I guess. So, there's that guy who obviously was the one who's thinking of murder, and he tries to murder the ambassador, which is dumb because he knows as soon as he looks on him, he will go insane, which is exactly what happens, so it doesn't make any sense. And he's like insanely jealous of, because he wants to be with Miranda Jones, and she doesn't. She rejects him because she'd rather spend her time with the ambassador, and so he contemplates murder. That's a very two-dimensional character, which I really don't care for. And then he goes insane right at the time Scotty's like, yeah, sure, here, have at the controls of the ship. And then he acts sane enough to do that, and then all of a sudden, of course, starts driving the ship to go super fast. It goes warp 9.5, which, by the way, is something the Enterprise D has done. And then the Enterprise enters some weird space. Now, they say that the Enterprise left the galaxy, but it's in an unknown space. So it makes me think that it like created a rift. I mean, surely it couldn't like go to the galactic barrier after just by going 9.5. That's not that fast. As I said, the D does that all the time. So I must, and plus I fucking hate the whole concept of the barrier. And they never really official state like where they are, but they're in this weird space. And I was watching the special editions, and the weird space looks kind of generic, but in the original series, the original version, aired version, it looks absolutely horrible, looks cheesy. Although the shots with the Enterprise, the external shots that show the Enterprise in space, look so bad, but then it's obviously like a model and this weird thing. But then the shots on the view screen actually they don't look too bad, actually. It looks more like a screensaver from modern times, which, let's be honest here, is a step up for original series special effects. But the special editions were definitely better. Definitely better than that. So it was actually less distracting watching the newer, the special edition versions, rather the remastered, I think they call them, rather than the original version that aired, so it actually helped me enjoy the episode more. And this, yeah, I think overall the remastered was like did improve this episode, particularly towards the end where they showed them meeting up with this other tiny ship, which is cool. But anyway, so the guy went insane, and then Kirk and Spock, Scotty and Spock and all of them pin him down, and McCoy's about to give him a shot that will sedate him, and he starts freaking out. He's like, no, we can't sleep. And like, okay, so he's insane. He's having an episode, so just ignore him and sedate him. But no, Kirk doesn't do that. Kirk's like, okay, stop. And he tells McCoy to back off and indulges his insane ramblings. For what purpose? Like, what does he think that's going to accomplish? And sure enough, he tries to strangle Miranda Jones because Kirk was dumb enough not to sedate him. And then he promptly dies for no reason. McCoy even is like, oh, there's no explanation. I guess he's like Padme and died of sadness. But, here's the thought, though. Maybe he wouldn't have died for no reason if McCoy fucking sedated him. Why did you stop him, Kirk? Why? It's such a bad captaining decision. Anyway, but, Kirk, this is the norm. If you're not a main character, Kirk doesn't really give a shit if you die or not. I mean, the dude might as well have been wearing a red shirt. I think it might have been a red shirt, now that I think about it. But anyway, so that whole thing was frustrating. The whole plot with them being stuck in this weird, like, why is just him fucking around with the engineering buttons for a couple seconds cause them to be stuck in this weird space? Like, that's dumb. And okay, so then Spock has come up with this plan to join with the Medusan ambassador. So because they're supposed to be like amazing piloting, and that's mainly what they want to bring to the Federation. More of the navigation, and that they're really good at it, so they can get out of the situation. Get them out of the situation. If Spock joins with the ambassador, then the ambassador can use Spock's body and his mind to navigate. And yeah, that makes perfect sense. But they point out, well, the flaw in that plan is that Miranda Jones has shown a lot of jealousy, which, by the way, the jealousy that she shows is very on the nose and very like overt and a bit ridiculous in my opinion. Like, she's too, like, Spock is wearing that Vulcan edict thing, and she's like, oh, you're insulting me to show how Vulcans are superior. Like, she's being obtuse. But anyway, so in other words, I mean, I don't mind them saying that she's jealous or showing her being jealous, but I just think they went overboard with this. But this is the original series, so what do I expect? But anyway, so they say the only flaw in Spock's plan is that she's not going to be okay with this. She's going to interfere, and locking her up is not going to help because she can use her psychic abilities to fight it, which they're that powerful. She's a human being. But anyway, so they think it's a nifty idea to just have Spock do it behind her back and have Kirk try to distract her. I do kind of like how Kirk failed at distracting her, as I said, because he keeps droning on about how beautiful she is, and then she of course finds out Spock's trying to do it anyway, and they try to plead with her to let them do it. But Spock had already had this conversation with the ambassador, so she goes in and talks to the ambassador and yells because she's being so childish, and it's like, fine, you guys can do it. Who cares? I mean, I guess you can save all our lives and get us away from this limbo, which we'll sort of die from. I guess, sure. Like, whatever. Like, why is she not more concerned about her own safety? But whatever. So, they agree to it, and Spock joins with the Medusan, and this is a cool scene. I think Leonard Nimoy's acting is really good here, portraying the wonderment of what it's like to actually be in the humanoid body for the first time. And I think bringing up language is an interesting thing because, yeah, from their perspective, language would be something unique and something that's not always reliable. So I did like that sense of wonderment that was portrayed there. But then, of course, we need to have more threats. So after Spock gets them out of that weird space, when he goes to, put the Medusan back or separate, he just forgets to put his visor on, which just causes him to go insane. That's dumb. Now, I know later in the episode they'll try to Kirk's theory is that Miranda used her psychic powers to make Spock forget, but and I think maybe they're implying that's the case, but still, I don't think that's. I still don't like it. I still don't buy it. I still think that's dumb. He wouldn't forget to put on the goggles that stop him from going insane. I don't care what Miranda does to him, but whatever. And then, so I think this whole threat is kind of tacked on at the end of Spock being insane, and I don't know. I always remember those fish. It's a cool cinematography camera effect, the fishbowl thing that they do from the point of view of the person who's gone insane to sort of signify that they're insane. Always Kirk is always oh, the fishbowl. But I always remember watching this when I was younger and being so bored with these scenes. I'm like, oh yeah, Spock's attacking. They pin him down, blah blah blah. So I don't know. I'm not that impressed with it. I did like the editing and all the weird visuals when they showed Miranda trying to finally correct Spock's insanity. It was a bit cheesy, but also, if I try to grant that this was in the 60s, it was also kind of cool. I did kind of like it. I think it was interesting cinematography. They kept doing the fishbowl shots of Miranda that made her look ugly, which again gets to the whole theme of the episode: is there in truth no beauty? Which is a harpening to that theme, which I still think is inappropriate, and that they're kind of cramming it into the concept of the Medusans, but whatever. And then, yeah, Kirk, at first her trying to heal Spock isn't working because Kirk thinks that she still sees him as a rival and something inside her doesn't want to heal him. And so Kirk goes in there, yells at her, slaps her around. Well, doesn't slap her around, but grabs her by the shoulder, which is the signature move. And you get the overacting. With Diane Muldaur, I think, from this episode and Return Tomorrow, was mostly a really good actor, especially compared to a lot of other guest stars we have on TOS. But then we get a bit of overacting from her again, where it's like, no, you're a liar! I don't buy that acting, but I don't know. I think that's probably a director's note because this is TOS. Everyone has to overact. But anyway, so Kirk, after he goes in, first he tells McCoy, he's like, don't interfere with me. Just stay out here, don't bother me. And he goes in there, yells at her, saying, you want to kill Spock and blah, blah, blah. And then when he comes out, he's like, maybe I made things worse. What if I made things worse? What if I went too far? And I'm like, well, geez, Kirk, maybe you shouldn't have told McCoy not to interfere, you dumbass. But anyway, turns out, though, of course, he didn't go too far, and it was exactly what she needed to hear, because she heals Spock, and then they part on good terms, and they give the Vulcan salute, and she leaves in peace. Although I'm kind of confused. They seem to kind of imply that she did join with the Medusan. So are they joined in the same way that Spock was? Is that what happened? Or is or did she glean the Spock's experience of being joined with him, and so now she knows what it's like to be joined? I thought, oh, maybe that's it. But then they kind of implied maybe she had joined with him briefly. Like, I don't know what it is because they don't explain it. It's just, I was like, when did it happen off screen? And they don't really. I felt like I was missing something in that final scene, which was very annoying. And then, Kirk is in the transporter room when the Medusan beams away, which was made very clear at the start of the episode. Any human who was there when he transported it would go insane, and that's even Spock had to put on the visors. And they showed Kirk standing inside the transporter room, and I was like, oh, maybe he left off screen. But then after she beamed away, they cut back to Kirk, and he's still standing there. So unless he walked out of the room and walked back in the exact same spot he was standing before, then he should be fucking insane. But whatever, I don't know. Anyway, my rating for Is There in Truth No Beauty out of 10 is a 5 average. It's average. It's fine. There's some things I like about it. I do like the character of Miranda Jones. I like Diana Mulder's performance. I like the concept of the Medusans. Some of the scenes that, like when Leonard Nimoy joined with the Medusan, was acted beautifully. So it is refreshing to see some good acting in the original series. But the whole side plot with that guy going insane, and it was fucking, like, the most ridiculous thing. Someone in this room is a murderer. Who could it possibly be? It was so dumb. And how just by pressing a few buttons, he takes him into this weird space thingy. So, in other words, the plot of this episode was very contrived. And then Spock going insane at the end because he forgot to put on the visor. He just forgot. I guess he's like Daenerys in season 8 of Game of Thrones. Somehow he just forgot. So that was contrived as well. So the plot devices are very contrived in this episode, and it did drag on for too long and was kind of boring. But things about it I liked. So it's not a terrible episode. 5 out of 10. Now, I wouldn't jump the gun because I gave my rating before I read my Patreon comments, but I'm too lazy to edit this, so I'm going to just go ahead and give my Patreon comments after my rating, because why not? Hey, who says, what's the rule that it has to be after I give my Patreon comments? Anyway, first I'd like to thank, of course, my patrons for supporting my channel. We have Chuck Hooks, Kyrie091, Anthony D. Benedictus, Ricky Matty Jester, Joel Viles, Brian A., Alessandro Miguelicio, Norman Buckwald, Stephen Kennedy, Brenton Berg, Allison Fordyce, and Brendan Neal House. Thank you also so very, very, very much for your support. It is, of course, very much appreciated. So, now let me go ahead and bring up those aforementioned comments. First comment is from Ricky, saying, this episode was average to me. There was nothing about this episode that sucked or that annoyed me. The plot is very forgettable. About the special ambassador being transported and the guy that accompanies him is too obvious that he is the bad guy. And also the same woman that was in season 2's episode Return to Tomorrow was actually a better episode here than this episode, as I believe she was an interesting enough character, and the Spock beaming effect by the ambassador was a bit interesting. So my rating is a 5 out of 10. As always, me and Ricky pretty much on the same page. So next comment is from Brandon Neal Howes, who says, is there in truth no beauty? The title of this episode should have been Eye of the Beholder. Who defines what beauty is, anyway? Remember how repelled the Cretaceans were by the crew of the Enterprise NX-01 eating in public? What a heap of misogynistic garbage. Miranda Jones beaming on the Enterprise with the mystery box in her hands, then spends the majority of the episode being told how beautiful she is, how cold and jealous she is, or how much she needs a man when she's not being sexually harassed, of course. It's just as well Miranda is blind, so she's not able to see the hard ones of all of the men sitting around the dinner table. How is Spock honoring Miranda by wearing the edict? I don't grok it. This episode is crap, and the angles make me dizzy. I do enjoy Miranda's rejoinder to McCoy, though. How could one so full of joy and love of life as you, Doctor, condemn yourself to look upon disease and suffering for the rest of your life? Can we allow that, gentlemen? I wonder how Geordi LaForge would feel if his blindness was focused on in this way. As a person born with a visible physical disability, this episode offends the hell out of me. 1 censor web dress out of 10. Well, that's fair. Now, that is definitely a very valid perspective, which I hadn't looked on before. And I didn't mention I forgot to mention the fact that Miranda was blind. I saw one review where they thought that was irrelevant and they could have cut it out the episode entirely. I actually disagree, because I think not only does that explain how she's able to be in the room with the Medusan and tolerate the Medusan, but also her unique perspective on beauty, which again, I thought that whole theme was kind of ham-fisted anyway. But yeah. So I already gave my rating for this episode. It was a 5 out of 10, much like Ricky. So yeah. That is it for my review of Is There in Truth No Beauty. So now let me go ahead and look at my schedule here to see what's coming up next. So tomorrow, Thursday, we'll be back over on Patreon for my revisited review for The Empath. Then on Saturday, remain on Patreon for another revisited for the Tholian Web. And then on Monday, still on Patreon, for another revisited for the World is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky. And on Wednesday, that's right, you guessed it, still on Patreon for another revisited, this time revisiting Day of the Dove. So yeah, 4 revisiting coming up next, although I shall be back the following Thursday with a public review on my YouTube channel with Plato's Stepchildren. But in the meantime, yeah, if you support me on Patreon, or if you're a Patreon supporter, you can check out my revisited reviews, while I'll go back to my previous reviews of those episodes and give my updated thoughts. Otherwise, leaving a like, subscribe, still very much appreciated, and you can join me next Thursday for Plato's Stepchildren. Thank you so much for checking me out and checking out this video. Be sure to check out my further coverage of Star Trek The Original Series, and covering, of course, many other Star Trek videos and many other videos on many other shows as well. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that, and thanks a lot for watching.